Your feelings are not evidence. So I watched the Candace Owens and Andrew Wilson debate regarding the Charlie Kirk case. Actually, I watched it 4 times, and then including a whole bunch of people's opinions on it. And I came away from it thinking something completely different that actually had nothing to do with Charlie Kirk or the case. We've got a problem in this country. We have confused feeling something with knowing and being able to prove something. And before anybody picks a team, calm down. This isn't a video about whether you like Candace Owens. This isn't a video about whether or not you like Andrew Wilson. This isn't a video about whether you're a Democrat or you vote Republican. I'm going to just basically apply the same standard to everybody, including myself. Watching it, I kept hearing, particularly from her, versions of "I feel like," "it seems to me," "I heard," "I had an intuition," "I had a dream." Okay, and your intuition might tell you to investigate something. Your gut might tell you to look further into something. Your gut might tell you something doesn't make sense. A dream may cause you to wake up and go, I need to think about something differently. But none of those things are evidence. If you tell me something feels wrong, my next question is, why? Show me. Give me the document. Give me the number. Give me the witness. Give me a timeline. Show me the contradiction. Show me the evidence. And if you can't do that yet, then you don't have a conclusion. You have a question, and that's okay. We seem to have gotten to the point where "I feel like" is treated as though it adds some sort of weight to an argument. It doesn't. And actually, I think most of the time it does the exact opposite. If I tell you the Constitution says something, I better damn well be able to show you where it says that. If I tell you the law does something, I better be able to show you the law. If I tell you somebody committed a crime, I better be able to show you some evidence that they did. If I tell you a government program works, I should show you the result. If I tell you capitalism works, I should show you how. If I tell you socialism works, show me how and where. If I tell you housing is unaffordable because we're not building enough homes, well, then that's fine. Show me the numbers. I don't care how strongly you feel about it, show me. Because realistically, feelings can tell you where to start looking, but they can't tell you when you found the truth. And of course, that got me thinking about a whole lot of other things that we're arguing about right now, starting with housing. So affordable housing, but for who? Everybody's talking about affordable housing. California politicians talk about it constantly. Republicans talk about it. Democrats talk about it. Your city's talking about it. Young people absolutely talk about it because a lot of them look at home prices and legitimately wonder, how in the hell am I ever going to be able to buy one of these things? And I understand that. Probably a lot better than a lot of the people that are going to criticize me for what I'm about to say. Because before somebody makes a comment and says, must be nice for some real estate guy who probably bought his home 30 years ago, no, that's not my situation. I got divorced in 2018. I sold my house. I paid off her debts, and I started completely over with my son. And then after almost 10 years in the corporate world, leading real estate offices and companies and affiliated services across California, I'm back to a 1099 employee. By the way, that means I don't have a check that comes. I only get paid when I sell and produce a result for a buyer or seller. And I rent. And look, I've got a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old that are looking at the same California housing market as I am, and we're wondering how the hell we're going to do it. And yes, somebody will say, move. Okay, but where to? Because me and the wife's jobs are here in California. Our family is here in California. Our entire lives, including our children's lives, except for my daughter who lives in Arizona currently attending school, are here. And I don't think you can tell 39 million Californians that the housing market, the affordable housing plan, now exists in Nevada. So let's actually talk about it. California does have a housing problem. Wow, unique to us, right? No. So let me read this. The Legislative Analyst's Office says the state continues to face constrained inventory, and as of March of 2026, about 76% of California homeowners with mortgages had rates below 5%. Those owners have a massive financial incentive not to sell and replace that mortgage with today's much more expensive financing. And that matters. But here's the part about affordable housing I don't hear enough about. What exactly do we mean by affordable housing? Because if you're a 27-year-old trying to buy your first house, you want prices to come down. If you're 67 years old and you've spent 35 years paying off the house that represents such a giant piece of your retirement wealth, do you really want your house to lose $200,000 in value? Of course you don't. So we have two groups of people who can both sincerely say, I want housing affordability, but they may have two completely different economic outcomes. Younger buyer wants accessibility. The longtime homeowner wants to retain and preserve their equity. You don't think those two ideologies can collide? And no, more housing does not automatically mean everybody's house crashes in value. More supply can moderate prices. More supply can moderate prices, and it can slow appreciation, reduce pressure on rents, with maybe not destroying the existing market. But let's stop pretending there's no tension here. For decades, millions of Americans have been told, your home is your biggest asset. Build equity. Protect your neighborhood. Protect your property value. Then our children grow up and say, I can't afford to live here. And suddenly we're shocked. Look, scarcity is wonderful when you own this scarce asset. It absolutely sucks when you're trying to get it. It's not Republican, that's not Democrat, that's just flat out economics. And if we're serious about helping the next generation, we're gonna have to admit that solving the housing affordability may mean the house you already own doesn't appreciate at the absolute ridiculous rate that you've gotten used to. You cannot demand that housing become dramatically more affordable for your children while demanding that your own property continues to increase 10% every year forever. Eventually, those two things meet each other. So why the hell are young people attracted to socialism? And that brings me to something that I think conservatives really need to take a look at and understand. You need to stop just laughing at young people when they talk about socialism. Understand why they're listening. That does not mean I agree with that solution. But I'm telling you, I want to listen to and understand what the actual problem is. Harvard's 2026 youth poll describes young Americans as being under intense economic pressure with a belief that they'll become financially better off than their parents, having fallen sharply over the last several years. So imagine being 22 years old. We were told our entire childhood, go to college, get the degree, take out loans if you need to. The degree will pay for itself. You'll get a good job. Then you can buy a house. Then you'll start a family. And that's how America works. So they did it. And some of them came out with $80,000 or $100,000 worth of debt and discovered that this job they were after either didn't pay enough to live on their own or required 3 years of experience before they could even get hired. Or worse yet, the job was being eliminated, AI, or outsourced. Think about it. Their rent is insane. Hell, I know mine is. A starter home looks like a fantasy. The car's financed, the student loan is waiting, groceries are expensive, insurance is expensive. And then somebody comes along and says, you've been screwed. The system is rigged. The wealthy took everything. Vote for us and we're going to redistribute some of that back to you. Do you understand why that pitch works? I do. Gallup found that Americans still viewed free market enterprise overwhelmingly at 81%. So that was positive. While capitalism was viewed positively at 54%, socialism by 39%. And Gallup also found that people who like socialism tend to cite the economic security and reducing inequality as its attractions. That's important because maybe what a lot of these kids are saying isn't, I've read Marx and I've carefully concluded that private ownership of productive capital should be abolished. I mean, come on. We know they didn't read Marx. Maybe what they're saying is, I don't think the system I'm living in gives me a path forward. That's actually a much more serious argument. And yelling communist at them isn't going to fix it. And by the way, neither is pretending that the government can magically provide everything without somebody else paying for it. Socialism, democratic socialism, communism, okay, maybe they're not interchangeable words. There are real differences, but forget the label for a minute. Tell me the policy, who pays, how much, what happens to incentives, what happens to investment, what happens when you run out of someone else's money, what happens 10 years later. Show me the result. Same rule. And let's talk about government, because I understand people are disillusioned by government as well. In fact, Pew found in 2005, just 17% of Americans said they trusted the federal government to do what's right, always or most of the time. 17%. Think about that. Now think about how the rest of your life works. I assume you go to work. Maybe you teach a classroom full of kids. Maybe you pull wire through a building. I don't know. Maybe you fix somebody's plumbing. Maybe you work on cars. Maybe you sell houses. Maybe you drive a truck. Maybe you're a nurse. Maybe you run a company. Whatever you do, someone expects you to produce something. Somebody expects you to show that you deserve that check you're getting on Friday. I want you to imagine showing up at your job and saying, well, I spent 20% more money this year. Great. What did you accomplish? Well, I don't know, but I'm going to need another 20% next year. You'd get fired. Now look at government. You earn money, there's income tax. You buy things, there's sales tax on most of the things you buy. Then you buy a house, you got property taxes. Pay off the house, you still got property taxes. You invest your own money that's already been taxed. You take risk. You actually get a gain. Taxes can come in play there too. And yes, before somebody races to the comments, your children are not automatically handed some giant federal death tax bill. The federal estate tax applies to very large estates. I'm not going to exaggerate something simply because it makes my sentence sound better, because doing that would violate the whole point of this video. But taxes touch every damn near part of our economic lives. And oh yeah, that's the money that's paying for government. And yes, the federal government can borrow money. But remember, borrowed money isn't magic money. Government spending still has a cost. So I have a simple question. Are they earning their check? Forget political parties for a second. If government were a company that you owned, would you retain management? If an employee continually spent more than you gave him, missed his goals, blamed another department, and then came back to you asking for more money and couldn't even explain where the last of the money you gave him went, would you promote him or would you fire him? And I'm not saying we don't need government. That's ridiculous. We need courts, police, fire departments, roads, infrastructure, national defense. And most of the time, I think we need schools. There are things civilized people have collectively decided we need to have done. My question is, are they being done well? And when did asking that become controversial? When somebody proposes another government program, don't just tell me how compassionate the program sounds. Show me the goal, show me the cost, show me the measurement. Show me whether the last program accomplished what it promised. And if it didn't, why am I giving you more money? Personal responsibility did not stop existing. And here's where I'm going to irritate another group of people. Because, look, I get it. Government policy matters. Housing policy matters. The economy matters. The circumstances you were born into absolutely matter. But your decisions still matter too. And we have become terrified about saying that. There are things in your life that you cannot control, but there are things that you absolutely can. Maybe the four-year university isn't your path. Maybe you're an electrician. Maybe you become a plumber. Maybe HVAC, welding, heavy equipment, automotive, construction. There are registered apprenticeship programs where you are literally being paid while you're learning the trade. That's not some internet motivational baloney. That's how registered apprenticeships are actually designed. The Bureau of Labor Statistics puts the median pay for plumbers, the pipe fitters, and steam fitters at roughly about $63,000 a year nationally, with the top 10% above $100,000. There are paths. They just may not be the paths that we spent the last 30 years telling every kid we're supposed to take. And sometimes your path means you're not going to drive the car you want. I drive an older car. Why? Because I don't need another giant car payment simply so the guy next to me at the stoplight thinks I'm successful. I know what my bank account says. Sometimes that keeps me up at night, but that's between, you and I guess. He doesn't. Maybe you live somewhere less exciting for a while. Maybe you work overtime. Maybe you learn something useful instead of collecting yet another credential piece of paper. And here's another one that's going to make somebody angry. I'm old-fashioned enough to say this. If you can, get married, build a stable household before starting to have children. I'm not judging somebody who didn't. Life happens. Mine certainly hasn't followed some perfect little plan. I'm talking about decisions before they happen. There is an enormous difference between somebody deserves dignity after making a difficult decision and pretending that decisions don't have consequences, because they do. So yeah, reform the system where it needs reform. Build housing. Get stupid regulations out of the way. Fix education. Create opportunities. Hold corporations accountable when they break the law. Hold government accountable when it wastes our money. But while we're doing all of that, do something yourself. You are not powerless. And convincing an entire generation they are powerless may be one of the cruelest things we've done to this generation. Because if I can convince you that nothing in your life is within your control, then there's only one solution left. Give somebody else control over your life. Usually somebody in government promising to fix it for you. Is this cultural Marxism? And that brings me to something I've been thinking about. People are throwing around that term, that phrase, cultural Marxism. Is that technically what we're watching? Maybe. Maybe not. I'm not really going to slap a scary label on something to pretend the label proves my argument. Again, you got to show me. But I do see a way of looking at a society becoming more common, where virtually every issue gets divided into two categories. Oppressor, oppressed, powerful, powerless, victim, victimizer. And once you've decided which category somebody belongs to, suddenly their individual behavior matters less. If you're in the oppressed category, your behavior gets explained by the system. If you're in the oppressor category, sometimes your individual circumstances don't seem to matter at all. And that's where I'm having questions, because human beings are quite a bit more complicated than that. A wealthy person can be a terrible human being. A poor person can be a terrible human being. A wealthy person can be incredibly generous. A poor person can be incredibly generous. A white kid born into absolute poverty does not magically have an easy life because somebody checked oppressor for him. Just doesn't. And a person from a historically disadvantaged group doesn't lose all agency just because that box was marked for him. Listen, we're individuals. History matters, culture matters, race can matter, sex can matter, money matters, family matters, luck matters, government policy matters, and individual choices matter more. And all of these things are true at the same time. So why are we so damn desperate to reduce everything into teams? And here's where I'm going to preemptively correct myself. And maybe this is the most important part of this entire video. I don't know. I had another example I wanted to use. I've seen all these claims and stories that young white women are among the groups that are most afraid to walk alone at night, while supposedly being the same exact group that is among the loudest, demanding that we defund police, empty the prisons, and release criminals. And I thought, that is an incredible contradiction. So I was looking for the data. And you know what? I can find the data that women are significantly more likely than men to report fearing for their safety walking alone at night. I can find the data showing younger adults have at different times been more supportive than older adults of limiting police or reducing police spending. What I couldn't establish was that the exact claim about the exact demographic group holding all those positions at the same time. So guess what? I don't get to tell you that's a fact, even though it would help my argument, even though I think it's a legitimate conversation about the tension between personal safety concerns and certain criminal justice policies, even though my intuition tells me there may be something worth investigating there. Sound familiar? That's the point. I don't get a special exemption from evidence because I like my conclusion, and neither does Candace Owens, neither does Andrew Wilson, neither does Donald Trump, neither does AOC, neither does CNN, neither does Fox, neither do you, neither do I. If I can't prove a specific claim, I need to change the claim. That's how this is supposed to work. So here's a legitimate question. If public safety is important to you, what criminal justice policies actually make you safer? Not just which policy sounds compassionate, and not what policy makes a great protest sign. Which one works? Show me. And honestly, the same damn thing applies to Gaza. I've also wondered something else. You see the LGBTQ activists strongly supporting Palestinians, and critics are immediately saying, how stupid are these people? Don't they see how gay people are treated there? There's a real tension worth discussing. Same-sex sexual activity between men remains criminalized in Gaza. It's under an old British Mandate-era law carrying a maximum prison sentence of 10 years. And apparently that provision doesn't apply everywhere in Palestine territories. So yes, there is a legitimate question about values. But here's where thinking has to go another step. A gay American can say, I completely reject their laws concerning gay people. I also don't want Palestinian civilians killed. Those aren't logically contradictory positions. You can defend somebody's human rights even if that person may not defend yours. It's actually more of a moral argument. And you can disagree with it, but understand it first. At the same time, people supporting a political movement should know what the movement believes. You don't get to put on a shirt, wave a flag, repeat a slogan, and never ask what the people you're supporting actually stand for. Again, know what you're supporting. And this is part of something bigger that's happened during my lifetime. Republicans and Democrats are not the same coalitions I grew up watching. Now, people fight me when I say this because they hear it as praise for one team and criticism for the other, but it isn't. Political parties change. They always have. Pew's long-term analysis of voters describes profound changes in the coalitions between both parties over the last 3 decades, including shifts involving education, race, geography. Rural voters have become increasingly Republican, while urban voters remain heavily Democratic. And education has become an increasingly important political dividing line. Listen, I remember Clinton, I remember the Bushes, I remember Obama. And to me, the change becomes impossible to ignore during the Obama era. And that doesn't mean Obama snapped his fingers and then all of a sudden the parties changed. The movement has been underway for decades. But somewhere along the way, the coalitions became very different. The Republican Party of George W. Bush was heavily identified with interventionist foreign policy and the war on terror. The current Republican coalition contains a much louder faction that is skeptical of foreign intervention. And the Democratic Party that I remember growing up with had a much larger cultural moderate working class component. Today's Democratic coalition has a much higher progressive wing pushing ideas that would have been far outside the Democratic mainstream of my childhood. Meanwhile, some of the voters moving towards Republicans today look culturally more like blue-collar Democrats that I grew up around than the country club Republicans I grew up with. The jerseys stayed the same. The people wearing them, well, they've changed. And that's not necessarily bad. Political parties are coalitions. Coalitions change when voters change. The problem comes when people don't notice. They inherit a political identity from their parents and they keep voting for the logo. My family votes Democrat, therefore I'm a Democrat. My family votes Republican, therefore I'm a Republican. Why? What does that candidate believe? Oh, I don't know. What policies are they proposing? I don't know. What has your party changed position on in the last 20 years? I don't know. Well, then what exactly are you voting for? A color? Stop worshiping politicians. And honestly, this might be the strangest thing that we've actually done. We've turned politicians into celebrities, almost religious figures. Donald Trump doesn't need to be your father. Barack Obama didn't need to be your best friend. Joe Biden didn't need to be your grandfather. AOC doesn't need to inspire you. A politician need not be Christ-like. They aren't going to be. They never were. They never will be. These are simply human beings applying for a job. That's it. So stop asking, do I like him? Ask, what will he do? Stop asking, would I have a beer with her? Ask, what legislation does she support? Stop defending something stupid your candidate said because you're terrified that admitting it was stupid means the other side wins. You know what you're allowed to say? I voted for him and that was stupid. I voted for her and I disagree with this policy. That's called thinking. Your politician doesn't need your unconditional love. I mean, your spouse might, your children should. Your politician needs oversight. They work for you. Treat them accordingly. And you're probably watching the wrong government. And here's where I want to end this. We spend hundreds of millions of hours obsessing over the White House. Trump said this, some senator said that, a congresswoman tweeted this, everybody's screaming. Meanwhile, I'm going to ask you, who's on your city council? Seriously, name them. Who's on your school board? Who's on your planning commission? Who's your county supervisor? Do you know? Because while you're screaming about somebody 3,000 miles away, somebody sitting 5 miles from your house is voting whether 400 apartments get built down the street. They're voting on zoning, development, local policing policies, roads, restrictions, school policy, things you are actually going to encounter when you walk out your front door tomorrow morning. California's housing system in particular gives cities and counties enormous responsibility over local land use decisions. But national politics is exciting. Local government's boring. Until the empty lot behind your house turns into something you hate. Then suddenly everybody wants to know who approved it. You did. Or more ultimately, you didn't pay attention to the people who did. So here's my point. I genuinely do not care how you vote. Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, what the hell ever. I care whether you know why. Don't tell me I feel like he's a good person. I don't care. Don't tell me she seems like she cares. I don't care. Don't tell me I've heard this policy will help people. Show me what's the policy. How much does it cost? Who pays? Who benefits? What incentive does it create? What behavior does it discourage? What happens 1 year later? What happens 10 years later? What happens somewhere else when somebody tried it? Did it work? And if it didn't, why are we trying to do it again? And the same thing applies to the conspiracy theory you love, the economic system you love, the politician you love, the social movement you love, the political party you hate. Apply the same standard. Because if evidence only matters when it hurts the other side, you don't actually care about evidence. You care about winning. And maybe that's the biggest problem we have right now. We've built a culture where everybody has an opinion. Everybody's got a microphone. Everybody's got a team. Everybody's got a feeling. And almost nobody wants to say the 3 words that actually make you smarter. I don't know. I don't know, so I'll look. I don't know, so I'll read. I don't know, so show me. And if the evidence proves something I've believed for even 20 years is wrong, then I need to change what I believe, and so do you. Because the goal should not be to prove that I was right. The goal should be to get it right. Your feelings matter to you. They matter in your relationships. They matter to your family. They can tell you when something deserves your attention. But when you're deciding how to govern 330 million people, when you're accusing somebody of a crime, when you're spending someone else's tax money, when you're deciding whether the police should be funded, when you're deciding how housing should be built, when you're deciding on an economic system we're going to hand our children, your feelings are not enough. Show me the facts. Show me the costs. Show me the consequences. And most importantly, Show me the results, because that's what you have to do every day, every week, when somebody decides whether or not you've earned your paycheck. Maybe it's time we expected the same thing out of the people that are spending our money.